All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a great podcast today. I'm being joined by a young woman that just had her first cage fight after so many years. She's trained for this moment. She's wanted this moment. She's had a couple opportunities fall through, and finally we were able to get it done. Right before I get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Sydney Churches, the girl that just won her first MMA fight. But before you start on that introduction, for the people that don't know you, this is how I start my podcast. I want to take it all the way back. I want to go, where were you born and raised? What were you like as a young kid? What were the influences you had in your life? What kind of shaped you? And then we'll slowly build your story to the modern times.
Okay, well, my name is Sydney Churches. I was born and I've lived in Howell for my whole life, so 20 years. I lived in a couple different cities. Like I've lived in Gregory, Michigan and Weberville, Michigan. I kind of moved around a little bit as a kid. But I went to school in Howell. I graduated in Howell. And I grew up, I lived with my mom for a few years and I had split custody, so I bounced back and forth between my mom's and my dad's. I have two older siblings at my mom's. I have an older brother who's 8 years older than me and an older sister who's 6 years older than me, 6 years and 1 week. And my dad put a lot of influence into my life in the sense of he did a lot for me and showed me things that were more interesting. I had a dirt bike and I had a four-wheeler and I had all these toys and we would always be outside and go to the park and stuff. And my mom was more of an emotional parent for me, so I was able to go to school and have, if I had a bully or something or somebody that I didn't like, my mom would help me a lot with that rather than my dad was more like a dad. Your dad's not going to sit down and cry with you about the bully at school, but your mom will.
So it sounds like you had a little bit of a balance. I mean, you had completely different influences, which is probably healthy to get both perspectives because then you can kind of learn, which ones are best for you. Some people only have a nurturing, loving influence in their life, and then they lack some of that grit and toughness that you can get out of the other perspective. Was it difficult being in a split home? Was there animosity? Was there difficulty between your parents? Or when you were a kid, were you kind of ignorant to it? You didn't really see all the struggles? Or was it a part of your life growing up?
My parents are definitely two very different people, and they're they would have never lasted as a relationship after, when I was older. So as a kid, going to school, I always saw people with their parents, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish my parents were together. I wish that was something that I had in my life. And then as I got older and I realized how, what kind of people my parents are, I realized that they would never make it together, and it would have been so much harder for my life for them to be together rather than for them to be apart. And I wouldn't really say that it was a big deal. Even as a kid, I wanted them to be together, and I got over it. It wasn't something I cried about or anything. I never knew my parents to be together, so it was never I had to go through a whole divorce or anything like that. So I think that helped a little bit too. But it really wasn't a big deal. I like the balance because my dad is there for me. If something is really wrong, if I went through a sad breakup or something, or any teen girl stuff, my dad would be there if I needed him to. But the balance was good because my dad was telling me to just get up and do things and get out in the world and just move on, where my mom was the emotional help and what I needed, and then my dad would push me a little bit further and then I'd get over it faster. So it was nice.
And it sounds like you're a little bit of a tomboy. If you're out there riding dirt bikes and you're doing all those things, would you have classified yourself that way as a kid, and did that make you stand out from other young girls?
I was literally a boy. My dad wanted a son so bad. I used to wear Buzz Lightyear clothes. I'm convinced I actually used to wear little boy clothes when I was a little kid when I was with my dad. My mom braided my hair and put all these cute earrings and sweaters on me for my school pictures. The 1 year I didn't get ready for school pictures at my mom's house, I wore a Fox Racing dirt bike jersey for my school pictures. I didn't curl my hair or nothing. I just got ready. It's a great picture. It's on my fridge.
That's awesome. So again, there's that balance. You're experiencing both sides, and by having both influences in your life, you could kind of figure out who you were or what you were drawn to. So, you start going through school. I can tell that there's a little bit of perspective framing. Like you're trying to figure out, hey, these people have parents together. I don't. Why aren't mine together? And now, I can tell how much you've matured. You're like, listen, my parents wouldn't have worked. It probably would have been chaos if they would have tried to make it work. You might have grown up in an extremely broken home with a lot of craziness. So it's probably best that they parted ways, but you don't realize that until later.
Right.
What was your school experience like? It sounds like you bounced around homes, but you said you just went to Howell. Were your parents able to keep you in the same school district, or did you have to bounce between a couple different during those moves?
I went to, I did preschool in Howell, and then I went to kindergarten at Southwest Elementary. And then I think we registered me for school too late. So when I was going to go back to Southwest, they were too full or whatever. So I ended up transferring to Voyager, which is still in Howell. And I finished 1st through 5th grade there, and I loved it. I loved Voyager. It was a fantastic school. I think it was more like my mom would drive me to school, or I would stay at my dad's during school weeks and stuff. And they always made it work. I don't really remember how, but it always worked. We did live in Howell a couple times with my mom, so most of the time I was within the district, so I rode a bus or a transfer bus. But by the time we lived further out, like Weberville, my sister had gotten her license, so my sister would drive me to Voyager and drop me off, or at middle school, and I would just hang out in kids care. I was in kids care for people that get dropped off early, or I think she used to maybe just drop me off at my dad's house because it was super close to the school, and then I would walk to school or get on the bus then, but I would just wake up super early and go with my sister. So it was never really bad. I don't ever remember having a bad experience that way. It was nice that I stayed in the same schools, though.
Absolutely. So your friend group is constantly not being ripped away from you, and you have to start all over as the loner, and you have to that is a difficult process. It shapes people a lot, but it's a difficult process. What were the big influences to you in school? Did you play sports growing up, or what was shaping Sydney? Obviously, it sounds like you were probably riding dirt bikes and you're doing some of those things. But if we could go back to the 13-year-old Sydney, what does her world revolve around? And then, or maybe right before boys come into the picture, what does your world revolve around? And then when you start to get 15, 16, we'll paint that story later. But what did you think you were going to be, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, when I was 13, I was already training. Because I started training when I was I think I was 10, turning 11 the next month, because I started in November.
You know what? Then let's not skip that. From right now, let's talk about the entire way that you ended up in our doors at SFS. So for the people that are listening, we've been in our current location for 5 years. Coming on 5 years. We were in another location 2 years before that, and then we were in a previous location. Sydney actually joined in the previous one in Howell, across from Art Van by B-Dubs, next to Total Fitness Center at the time. And the story gets told a lot around here because you were a little fireball. But give me the lead up. How did you decide that you were going to go there? Was it your idea? Was it your father's idea? Kind of build that story for the whole audience on how Sydney Churches walks into SFS.
So I think at that time, I was living full-time with my dad, or maybe it was every other week with my dad, and my neighbor used to bully me, and my dad was my dad is just a typical dad. He's well, just beat her up, or, show her who's boss, or whatever he said. I don't really remember how it went, but I was I can't beat her up. I don't know how to fight, which is totally opposite of what I said when I first came here. But she was 2 or 3 years older, so I was I wanted her to think I was cool, and she just never did. She thought I was a loser or whatever. I don't know. And then my dad was at the gas station, and there was a little post-it card, a little postcard for a MMA event at the Palace of Auburn Hills that Bobby was fighting on. And so we went to that show, and when they announced Bobby's name, they said Howell, Michigan, or whatever. My dad was no way, there's one in Howell, we'll go drop you off to a gym. And then I went, and I was not interested at all. Even though I thought I didn't act like it at all.
When you were at the Palace and you watched this girl, because she's a blonde-haired girl, I cornered her for that fight. She's a blonde-haired girl that walks out there and throws down in the cage and stuff. Did it have any impact on you? Did you think did you not even see it as something that you could do? Like, explain that to me. And then it sounds like you showed up, but only basically because of your father.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think. I probably thought it was super cool. Like, there were so many fights and everything. And I had been a fan of Uriah Faber before that. I thought he was cute when I was like 9 years old. I was like, oh my gosh, you know. So I'd kind of been interested in MMA, and because I did like live with my dad, and I had like a dad influence that I was like, oh, you know, fighting and dirt bikes and all these guy things, you know. So I thought it was cool. So when I look back on it now, like I would think that was super inspiring, seeing a girl go out there and do that, because she was fairly young then too, like probably about my age now, or maybe just a few years older. And it was, I don't know, it was different. Like, it was definitely different to see a girl, because there was no professional females like that were huge. Like, there was no Ronda Rousey then. Like, I didn't see it all over the news or anything, or all over social media, and I was too young to have social media. So it was definitely different, and I just came in, and that's when I was like nervous and I thought I was gonna do something cool, and then I was like, eh.
So you, though, probably didn't even want to walk in the door. It sounds like your dad was kind of pushing you to like, hey, we found out this girl trains in Howell. We're going to go to that school. Your dad probably did the research. He looked up the place, and now he tells you you're going. Do you remember that day? Like, were you nervous? Were you anxious? Were you excited? Describe, you first come in, your father's kind of pushing you to do this, but it's a huge jump for a young girl. Like, you know, the little savages we have in here, like Harlow and Teresa, and like, it's like, but now it's in the culture. Now MMA is widely accepted. Now there's a ton of girls training in the gym, no matter what program you go to. Back then, there was not nearly as much of an MMA presence and stuff. So you come in the gym for the first day, and then I'm going to let you tell the legendary story you come on, you got to do it. So we had one of the funniest first days ever, but I'm going to have Sydney tell it, and if I have to add to it, I will.
I'm sure I probably, like, in the car on the way there, I was probably super excited, actually. I was probably like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so cool. And then when I walked in and everyone was looking at me, or everyone was talking to me, that's when I was like, oh, you know, I don't really want to be here, or whatever, trying to act cool. Like, it was like, I'm too cool to be here or something. I'm sure that's exactly how it went, especially knowing me and my little attitude. It's probably exactly how it went. I should have asked my dad, but it was definitely different, because now I come to the gym and I don't have to worry about there not being a girl. You know, normally there's always at least one girl, even if it is Harlow or something. Like, there's always someone that is female there. I wouldn't really care anyways, because I started when there wasn't. But I think when I started, there was maybe 5 girls, not including me. And it was Bobby, Callie, Amy, and Natalie. So 3 girls that I didn't even train with, and 1 girl that was a lot older and bigger than me, because I was a chubby kid, but I wasn't like, I was really young. So it was different to be with someone older and bigger.
Were you 10 or 11 when you started? I don't remember the exact age.
I don't remember the exact year, but I think it would have been 2011 or 2012, because I was 10 in November and my birthday's in December, and that's when I turned 11. I believe that's when it was.
So it's probably right on that line. That timeline makes sense, because we were in that building in 2012. So what's crazy is, like, you were the age that, like, Harlow and Teresa. Actually, Teresa is 12. She's just a little bit smaller. But it's like, you know, look at the attitude and the energy and stuff out of there. It's so different now. Yeah. But you come into the gym. Let's talk about your first practice.
Well, I came in, and the first class that was going on was jiu-jitsu. And so, just like still today, we did our like jogging warm-up, our shuffling inside, shuffling outside. We've added more things now, but it was a pretty basic warm-up then. Literally just jogging, shuffling inside, outside, running backwards. And I actually think that was it. And I would not jog. I probably wouldn't shuffle inside or outside. I definitely wouldn't run backwards. Maybe I walked all of them, because I said I was not going to run. I would only walk. I can only imagine what I wore. I probably didn't even wear gym clothes. I was probably like, I'm not doing that. And I would not shoot a single leg, because I thought that was weird. I literally said it was weird. I was like, I'm not doing that. And then James was like, okay, you know, what are you doing here? And what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I want to fight. You know, I want to learn to fight. But I already know how to fight. He's like, okay, go train with Bobby and show her what you want to do. And so Bobby held mitts for me. And she asked me to throw a jab, and I don't think I threw a jab. I actually think I threw a cross, but it wasn't like a technical cross. It was just a punch. And she was like, okay, clearly you don't know how to fight either, so you're lying to us. What are you here for? That's all I got. You can tell the rest.
No, it was honestly, that was an extremely good rendition of how I remember it. So basically, this little fireball 10 or 11-year-old was like, I already know how to fight. What are you going to teach me? Pfft, I'm not doing that single leg. What are you going to grab somebody's leg in a fight? I'm not doing that. I'm here to really fight. I'm going to throw these little knuckles at people. And yeah, Bobby is, anyone that knows Bobby, she's abrasive. Even it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Women,
I was literally 11,
children,
10 years old. She's like, what are you
full-grown
doing?
men, elderly people, babies. She's gonna give you a blunt response. Like, it's just who she is. So she was very just like, that was a joke. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you better get it together, kid. And then you did, though. You stayed. You kept training. You met a lot of friends in that period that I feel like, because you really became a part of the community, like you, Randy, and later on the kids changed over time, but like John, we always used to joke around, was like your nemesis, because you two would go at it, you and John McDevitt, the McDevitts, and they were wonderful people. But we really created a good core group of people. And you were one of very few girls that were training at the time. I think there was another girl named Autumn that came a little bit later.
Yeah, she was my friend. She ended up coming a little bit later.
Yep, she came a little bit later. But I'm trying to remember, did we ever have any other girls that were really consistent? Because we had Rogelio, we had John, we had the twin boys, Grayson and Gavin.
Brennan,
RJ, Logan. Yep, they were there. But yeah, so anyway, the culture grew as the gym grew, as, me and Bobby were growing in our MMA careers. How do you think, once you got into it and you started being a martial artist and you started training legitimately and competing, you did some nagas and stuff as a kid, how did that help shape you? What changes did you see in your life? And then when you're going through high school, we always get asked the question, like, what are you going to do after school? Did you ever really think about what you want to do in life when high school ends? Or was it always just a process to like, I'll figure it out when I get there? So how did martial arts change you, shape you? And then what did you think the next chapter of your life was going to look like?
I think getting into martial arts as a super young kid definitely played a bigger role than what it would have if I started when I was even 16 or 17. I think it would have helped me either way, but as a young kid, maybe it was just me, but as a girl going through high school, going through middle school, I was super insecure. I was a little bit bigger as a kid. Like in 6th grade, I remember I weighed in for my first tournament at 110 pounds, which is quite large for a 6th grade girl. And so that was a big problem for me throughout all of middle school. Like I created this insecurity in myself. And that I kind of forgot about that when I was here. Like, sure, I was, listed as one of the bigger kids, but it didn't really offend me. It made me feel like I was better at what I was doing. Like, oh, I'll go train with John, who was super good. So it made me feel like I was working with the better people. So that meant I was better. Maybe that wasn't true, but it made me feel like it. So going through high school and everything, it was nice to have this as, a muse, I guess. Because high school, I hated high school. I didn't like people, and I was insecure, and, I didn't have any friends. I had friends, and, I had people that I talked to in school, but not necessarily as much out of school, which when I thought about that, I was like, holy crap, I talked to all these people in school, and I'm friends with them in school, but I could never hang out with them outside of school, so that made me feel like even more of a loner, which is embarrassing. But
do you have any insight as to why you were so, kept in your own shell? What kept you from just being who you are? Because you are a personable woman. I've seen you put out great energy. You're willing to hang out with a large variety of people. You can treat people. What kept you so in your shell?
I think that I've become more of a personable person in the past couple of years, rather than when I was more shy and scared of who I was. I think that I was too nervous to be myself, that people, especially in high school that are super judgmental, would think that I was weird or just too much. And in high school, that was the biggest thing for me. I was like, oh my God, I don't want that kid to think I'm weird because maybe I thought he was cute, or oh, that girl's popular. I don't want her to think that I'm odd or loud or obnoxious. Now I don't care. I don't care what really anybody thinks about me. The people that I do care about think I'm cool, so that's enough. But I think I've grown a lot in the past couple of years, and now I'm able to talk to anybody about anything, and it doesn't faze me. But back then, I was like, oh my God, Maddie in math class can't think I'm weird. Like, and then somebody, actually a Maddie from math class, did like say something about me one day, and I was like, I went home and I cried about it. I was like, oh my God, Maddie thinks I'm annoying because I asked a question about something in math because I didn't get it. And I literally have thought about that multiple times, and it fazed me. Now I'm like, I don't give a crap about Maddie.
Yeah, that's massive. It shows you how much your perspective can get skewed based on events just as like a kid. Because like now in the scheme of things, you're like, who cares? If I had a question because I didn't understand a concept, I should ask.
Right.
And I
That's
shouldn't.
like,
And if you think I'm bizarre for asking, well then like don't come to me with questions. Because if I tried to teach you about jujitsu, you'd be like, I don't understand how this works. You would have a question.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can reframe things later on, but it's crazy how much our mind can take us off the right course and like skew our perspective. Like, man, maybe I should just not ask a question again because then I won't risk being embarrassed. But then you just shell up even more and then you feel more insecure. Then you're still having the question. You're just not resolving it, right? So you start to get through high school. You know, you're training martial arts still. You're hanging out with our crew because, like, I remember you guys used to come out to B-dubs and stuff pretty much all the time. Like, we could kind of count on you being there, which was super cool. Your dad was always highly involved. Mm-hmm. You'd come to the fights. I think I remember you walking out with Bobby a time or two. Like,
yeah, I used to walk out at like a lot of the TWC events. It was always really cool. Like even when I was younger, like I used to walk out with Josh Wiesel and Taylor Moore, and like that was the coolest thing for me. I used to think. I mean, I still think, but like Bobby and Taylor Moore and all of these people, I was like, oh my God, like these people are so cool. And like, I know them, you know, like I was like, oh my God, like I know these people. I would go to school and be like, oh yeah, is Taylor Moore in that yearbook? Yeah, I know him. He trains at my gym. Literally. I remember doing that. I think I was in 5th grade. I was like, oh, is he in that yearbook? Yeah, he would have graduated that year or whatever. He's definitely in it. That was me.
That's awesome. So. But my goal with doing that is to try to give people that uplifting feeling and make them feel a part of something bigger. Like I plan to, when B2 comes back to the Novi show in July, I'm going to try to get our entire kids elite team, like Harlow, Teresa, Lexi, Josh, Ethan, and let them come backstage and walk out with some of the fighters because I know how impactful that is. Being in a packed arena, lights are going, there's fights on, and as a kid, you get to go up in that spotlight where everybody is looking at you, but not at you, at your group, and there's great energy, and you're with the powerful person. You're with the fighter. Mm-hmm. I remember when you're a little kid, it's like they're a superhero.
Right.
You're like, oh my gosh, I'm a part of this. And that helps bring you up, you know? So you're starting to get through high school. Did you play any sports in high school besides martial arts? And then second, you know, what did you think life was going to look like when you get out of high school? Because it's always kind of like this impending pressure coming like, are you going to go to college? Are you going to get a job? Are you going to do this? Like, you better figure your life out. Did you know what your next chapter was going to be?
Well, throughout high school, I was a pretty good student. Like, I had a really good GPA, and I tried to get all my work done and everything. And then I think sophomore year, I started playing rugby. It was a club sport, so it wasn't, like, as serious as, like, a varsity sport. But I really enjoyed it. I do enjoy, like, you know, once high school came around, I realized that I was very, like, I was more rough than, like, most girls are. Like, I was a pretty raw person, and I didn't mind, like, getting hurt or tackling someone or, you know, it was just kind of something that I liked, especially because I was training for here all the time. So I played rugby for 2 seasons. It was in the spring, I think. Maybe it was in the fall. And I did really enjoy it, but as I got older, I was like 16, 17, I was like, all right, well, I want to be a fighter one day, so I'm terrified to, like, blow out my knee or something, get super injured in rugby, so I stopped. But I did really like it. I always thought if I went to college, I would play, like, in a beer league or something.
Do you know where that physicality and fighter comes from in you? Because it's not the norm in society. Most girls, because I remember you had that since the day I met you. You had a certain fire and an intensity, and you were willing to, like you said, you were willing to get hurt if it was like going all in something that you wanted to do. Like, and when we start talking about your fight, once we get to that point, anyone that wants to see a phenomenal debut, go watch Sydney's fight, but don't even just watch the fight. Watch her eyes leading up to that fight. Look at the fire that she has in her face. That other girl, this was her, like, oh man, Sydney was there, like, ooh, today is the day, girl. Like, you know what I mean? And like, do you know where that comes from? Have you always had that? Was that developed? Where does that fire and like kind of no fear attitude come from?
I don't really know. I think maybe like there's a lot of components into something like that. I've always been kind of, you know, like a ball of fire. Like I've always been like spiteful and like just willing to do things. I had like a pretty open childhood. Like I was always outside and riding dirt bikes, doing things with my dad. And then I had an older brother and older sister, so I always wanted to be cool to them. So at the time that they were doing like riding bikes and stuff, I was young. I wasn't able to ride a bike, so I was like, I'm gonna learn how to ride a bike. I'm gonna learn how to skateboard. I'm gonna learn how to do these things so that my older siblings think I'm cool. And so maybe like that competitiveness came from that, like wanting to compete with my siblings maybe. Um, Another part might just I really don't know. I think maybe because my dad is the way that he is. Like my dad's a very like cool, calm, collective guy, but also kind of has a temper at the same time. Like I'm very similar to that. But I really don't know exactly where it comes from.
You had a major influence in you when Ronda Rousey hit the stage. I remember when Ronda was first blowing up, you loved Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
Like, she really made an impact on you. I remember that was a time, like, you were a martial artist leading up to that. I think you were training martial arts significantly before you heard of Ronda Rousey. But when Ronda Rousey hit the scene, I remember little Sydney being like, one day, you see how the whole world loves that woman and looks up to her and thinks she's like, I mean, because during her prime, she was a literal superhero. Like all media outlets, everybody was like, that is the greatest example of female, expertise in combat ever. Like they were really on the Ronda train. How did that impact you as a young woman? And like talk about, having role models and things like that drive us, make us want to find greatness in ourselves, inspire us. Because Rhonda was just some young girl that trained martial arts and with her mother and through judo became this Olympian. And, talk about the Rhonda phase. And then let's talk about, high school ends. And now all of a sudden the like tutorial mode of life closes and you have all these options. Let's talk about what happens right after high school. If you get off track, if you get on track, do you lose the vision? Do you re-find it? And then we'll build up towards your fight. But first, we got to talk about the Ronda stage.
Yeah, obviously I love Ronda Rousey, and I still do, honestly. Like a lot of people kind of blew her off because she quit MMA or whatever, and no matter what she does now, like she's still an athlete. She's still a phenomenal person. I don't know her personally, so maybe she's not. I don't know. But that was a huge thing for me when I was a little girl. Like that was, that's like it. Like if LeBron James was from your hometown and you played basketball, and then you grew up to play basketball, and then LeBron James became LeBron James. Like that's just a huge deal. I was just a young girl training, and I was training consistently, and then all of a sudden this woman comes out of nowhere. I didn't know anything about her before that, and she just blew up, and like it was like she was a superhero, and that's exactly what she was to me when I was a little kid. Like I looked up to her, and that was just, it was a revolutionary thing for me, and that really put it into perspective that could be me one day. That I could make it as a fighter, not just locally but globally, and actually achieve something rather than just being a local fighter, I guess. Not that that's not an achievement, but to go further in life with it.
And regardless of whatever happens in Ronda's career, despite any bandwagon fans bailing on her, people turning on her, she's a legend forever.
Right.
She will go down in the history books as one of the greatest female fighters of all time.
She still did what she did,
100%.
which started female MMA.
Absolutely. She was, no matter what you say, a pioneer, trailblazing the way for other women to live the dream too. Dana White was actually on record at one point saying, we will never have women in the UFC.
Yeah, and then she fought a Strikeforce fight, and Dana was cage side, and she was like screaming at him, like, put me in the UFC, put me in the UFC.
And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to put women in the UFC. And not only was that a great decision, at the time, she was arguably the most marketable athlete they had ever had. Mm-hmm. From being like, will not have UFC or women in the UFC, to Ronda Rousey is the poster human being of our company for a period of time. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So high school ends, all of a sudden there's endless possibility in front of you. There's boy problems or struggles or direction. There's finding yourself. There's figuring out the next steps. There's getting a job. There's learning an actual job environment. Idealistically what you think a job's going to be like as a kid. Because when you're a kid, you just want to grow up. You can't wait. You're like, oh, I can't wait to be an adult. And then you find out what real life normally is and what it is for a lot of people. And it's, pretty mundane. It's pretty routine. It's not that exciting. Your dreams are slowly dying every day that you're not chasing them. Let's kind of just talk about, as you're ending high school, what are you thinking you're going to be? What does your life look like? Any struggles that you went through, we can go into a little bit. And then I want to get up to, we're going to skip past, like, you had multiple debuts lined up. we're just going to kind of talk about the one
Yeah.
that just went through.
So, the end of my high school career sucked because COVID hit in March of my senior year. So I'd actually just went to spring break with my boyfriend at the time and a group of his friends. So I had like an awesome spring break. You know, I went on college spring break as a high school senior. I thought that was so cool. And then I got back and I went to school for 4 days. I was making up all my assignments and everything that I had missed that past week. And then they canceled school and I never went back. We did online. And because I had been gone for that week before, I had had a couple of low grades. So kids that had like above whatever percent didn't have to do online, but I had just missed a whole week of school, finals and stuff. So I was like failing all of my classes. So I still had to do online, even though I would have normally had A's and B's. So I had to do online. And then I actually had a credit that I had to redo, and I couldn't go in school to retake my test, so I was like, I'm not going to graduate. I just did a great 3.5 years of high school, and I'm not going to finish high school. Like, I was terrified. And then I was devastated about prom and all of these things because at that point in my senior year, I had planned our prom so far. Like, I had planned and bought everything. I had booked the DJ, and like, you know, it was going to be at Crystal Gardens. It was going to be this whole thing, and like, that was something that I finally did at school. Like, I wasn't in yearbook or in student council. I was in leadership though, and I had planned our prom. That was like my task. So I was like, we're going to have the best prom. Everyone's going to think Sydney Churches is so cool. And then our prom got canceled, and then everything got canceled.
You know, I didn't know this. I actually thought you graduated in 2019. I didn't know that the freaking pandemic hit your senior year.
Yeah.
That is an incredible. When you are 80 years old, you will remember that vividly, and you'll be able to tell your great-great-grandkids about like when the world shut down, when I was planning prom.
Right.
That's unbelievable. So a lot of darkness set in on a lot of people at that period of time, and a lot of depression, a lot of helplessness, and you know what I mean? And like, without going into any of the specifics, because you saw the stance that I took and all the things that happened with that, you know, what was the rest of that year like for you, and how did you come out of that? Because I can't imagine how devastating that is to be looking forward to all those things. You're so excited about this, and then it all gets ripped from you. Or did the fire and resiliency in Sydney make you able to just like, this is terrible, but this is life, and like I can handle it? Tell me about that.
I mean, at first it was I was actually more scared. Like, I obviously had never been through anything like that before, and I have, you know, my grandparents and my great-grandma is still around, so I was like, you know, I like to see them often, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to see my grandparents, I'm not going to be able to do this. But more importantly, like, I was devastated. Like, I didn't get any good part of senior year. I didn't get a prom. I didn't get a good graduation. I didn't get to say goodbye to anybody that I was friends with throughout high school. You know, we broke off way before we were supposed to. And it was hard. It definitely was not easy. I had nothing to do. You know, I have no siblings that live with me at home. It's just me and my dad does demolition, so he was still working most of the time. And I had a boyfriend at the time, but we ended up breaking up like shortly after that. So I was alone throughout a lot of it, and I didn't have any outlets. I didn't have anything to do. I couldn't really go anywhere. I couldn't really hang out with people because so many people's families were like crazy about it, or they weren't crazy about it, and then someone would get sick or just all that stuff. So it was definitely a roller coaster of events. Like, it was just very back and forth. And then when the world started to kind of open up, I started training again, and so many people quit like doing things and just quit coming out. And so it was like all my, like, the friends that I did have, those changed because they had different viewpoints than I did. And I just wanted to get out, and I wanted to go do things. I remember I don't run. I don't like running. And I was going out and going for runs on trails. I was like, I need something to do. So I would go run like 3 miles on a trail, which is something that you couldn't pay me to do today. So it was definitely a different time in my life. Like, I think I grew a lot from it because I did do things that I wouldn't normally do. And I was very verbal about my viewpoints on it. And I think that helped, like, speaking my mind on those sorts of things that are very controversial in daily life definitely helped me out of any bit of shell that I did still have as a senior in high school. So that helped me grow a lot, being able to say, no, this is what I think. And I would never say I'm right and you're wrong. But it was nice to just tell people how I felt and not stand down when they disagreed with me. That's something I really try to do even still to this day. Like, I would never shame someone for their thoughts, but I don't want anyone to shame me for mine either.
That's a very good bit of insight for people. All these people that feel suppressed and they feel like they get run over and they are going back into their shell. You learn to speak what you believe, but in order to do so, you got to know that. You have to know yourself. You have to have confidence in your own thoughts and ideas, because if you don't have confidence in who you are or what you know, how are you going to stand on anything? Because as soon as resistance comes, you're going to go, oh, I don't know how to deal with this resistance, and you're going to crumble. We should all build to be people like that, that in spite of any adversity, in spite of any crowd against us or mob of people that are screaming something different, if we believe in something, we should be able to stand on it. You know what I mean? And like, I take a lot of pride in that. I don't care if it's me against 6 billion people. If I believe they're genuinely doing the wrong thing or trying to harm people, or things are not, for the benefit of everyone, then I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Right. And like you said, that makes you feel better. It makes you feel empowered, because you are an autonomous human being that is capable of making your own decisions if you utilize that. So I want to talk about leading up to this fight. So I'll quickly summarize. You had a couple disappointments. We had a couple fights get booked, and then last minute they drop out. And then you get another fight booked, and then the girl became pregnant, right? And I think you had, 2 fights fall out, or maybe 3?
Yeah, my first fight was supposed to be in April of 2020. And then COVID. Well, actually, because she fought, and our fight was 28 days later, and she got TKO'd, so she's not allowed to through the commission. So that was canceled, and there was no, when we were trying to find a replacement, then COVID hit. So then that was canceled, and then that was 2 years ago.
And it literally put everything on hold. And then you came back in, you started training, and I could see a different spirit about you. It was almost like you went through the roller coaster of all the stuff that you had to deal with, but then you had found yourself again, because you came back in with good energy. And then we had a meeting, and I was like, well, then let's get back to work, Sydney. Let's make this happen. And then we did, and we scheduled a fight. Your girl got pregnant last minute, and then we stayed on it. And I'm amazed that you didn't get overly discouraged, because that's 2 times now. You know what I mean? And I was like, girl, like, if you stay there, like, you're going to make that walk to the cage. So then all of a sudden we book with B2, a very reputable league. You've seen tons of the people in here fighting for them. I want you to walk through, even just to capture this moment in time for yourself and your family in the future, from the time that you found out you're locked in with B2 to showing up there. I want to talk about the weight cut process. And then the fight. I want you to just go in as much detail as you can about like what that experience was like in your life. And then we'll speak about like how you think that began to change you already and how you feel differently. And like, you're no longer the girl that talks about it. You showed you are about it. So the floor is yours.
So I don't remember exactly when we confirmed the fight, but I ended up taking a trip to Florida shortly after we booked it. I think I was in Florida when I actually got the fight poster, so we had already agreed to it, and I didn't know anything about her, but I was ready. Like, I knew that was something that I wanted to do, and I was super excited to do it, especially after it's been 2 years since we've talked about doing it, and now finally I was able to. And I started training. I guess I have trained pretty consistently, maybe a little bit on and off, but I trained consistently, and I was working for it, and I was super excited, and all the people in my life were super excited about it. Obviously my dad and my boyfriend. And it was super fun to train and to talk about it. And like, during warm-ups, people would be like, oh, you have a fight coming up, and it was super exciting to be like, yeah, I do. It's April 22nd, and when we booked it, actually, we were talking about what day it was, because you said it was in April, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah, I can do April. And then I was like, crap, there's no way that it's the same weekend as my sister's wedding. And then it was, actually. So I ended up fighting the day before my sister's wedding, which ended up being fine because I didn't get injured or hurt or anything. But it was definitely scary. It was definitely a scary thought in my head. I definitely thought I would take damage. I remember being like, oh, maybe she can fight like 7 days later in Dayton, Ohio, because not only is that closer to home, but it's also not the day before my sister's wedding. So I was a little bit nervous about that. At the beginning, like when we had first talked about it, and then getting closer to, and like with the, I changed my diet. I meal prepped. I had chicken and rice, and I, was working on walking lower than I was. Obviously the meal prepping didn't last long because my weight cut sucked, but anyways, So my boyfriend and I ended up deciding that we were going to go to Kentucky. I was going to fight. And then we were going to go to my sister's wedding the next day in Tennessee. And then we were going to take a trip to Florida for his first time in Florida because, unless I lost, it would have been a great vacation. If I lost, we would have been like horrible car rides, silent, no emotions. It would have been a really bad vacation. But if I won, then we were going to be in great spirits and it was going to be a super fun time. And we've never done anything like that. We've never traveled that far in our relationship yet this far. So we ended up doing that, and it was an unbelievable feeling. Like, when we first got there, it was, it was cool, I guess. Like, we were hanging out. Like, it was Randy and his friend, and then Evan and I. And it was cool. Like, I got to know Randy better and, like, be closer with him. Like, we've known each other for a long time, but, like, that's a different type of relationship. You're sleeping in the same hotel room as somebody, working for the same thing, talking about the same thing, and, like, they're nervous and you're nervous, and you get to talk about that, and that's really cool. But then the weight cut started on Thursday morning, and that was hell, actually.
You got to think, a lot of people that are going to be listening to this podcast, your friends, people that have known you over the years, everyone thinks like, oh, a weight cut, like I can do that, but they don't understand what actually goes into it, because this isn't like a weight cut over a period of time that you're substantially dropping your weight, percentages of your body weight. Like you dropped, what was it,
7.7 pounds.
7.7 pounds in a day.
Less than a day, because it was like 9:30 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon.
So from 9:30 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon, she had to drop just under 8 pounds of water. Leading up to the fight, I kept telling you, Sydney, you might want to get your weight down. Like, it's da-da-da. You showed up there.
I thought it would be a lot easier than it was. I really, people talk about it so casually. Oh, yeah, I got to do X amount of pounds water cut. And I'm like, oh, okay, we've talked about it for years. It's just been something that's been talked about in my life for almost 10 years now. So I was like,
probably desensitized you to
it.
You were like, oh, everybody does water
right.
cuts. They can't be that bad. They are that bad.
Right, they are that bad. I remember Bobby texted me, and she was like, oh, good luck or whatever. And I was like, none of you guys warned me that it was this bad. Nobody. I had no idea. Everybody talks about it so casually, like, oh, I'm gonna cut this much, and then I'm gonna walk at this weight, and I'm gonna water cut the rest. And I'm like, oh, okay, like water cuts are gonna be easy, no big deal. Have some salt bath, sauna, whatever. I hate saunas now. I always loved saunas as a kid. You're little and you go to the gym or the clubhouse or whatever. There's a sauna. You're like, oh yeah, I want to go sit in the sauna, and it's fun. It's not fun anymore. I hate it.
So while you're going through it, clearly you're struggling. You kept getting in and out of the sauna nonstop. You're trying to get in the hot tub as an alternate. We had to bring out a portable sauna for you. All I want you to really talk about, because obviously it's difficult and there's only so many words to capture it, and we can't capture it. No matter what we say,
no.
If you think that you have a really strong psychology and you're very mentally tough, let a professional MMA coach run you through a legitimate water cut. Even like Sydney did a 5% cut or about a 6%. We can go all the way up to a 10%. And you will understand, listen, there's a type of internal struggle that I had no idea even existed, because it is like your brain wants to panic. You think you can't breathe. Your body is like I'm dying without water. I'm going to die.
Literally.
I'm going to die. So you're sitting in the sauna. I'm going to go fast forward all the way to the venue. We only had about 0.6 left to cut, 0.6 pounds, right? So just over half a pound. And we're now there, and time is kind of ticking. Luckily, Sydney's opponent hadn't showed up yet. What was it like in those last couple things? Like, do you remember what was even going through your mind? Because it's like you are not in the state of mind that you are right here.
Right, no, not at all.
It's not this Sydney that I can rationalize with. Like, I couldn't have logical conversation like, hey, Sydney, I know it's really tough, but we're just over half a pound, and like I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to a panicked version of you. Talk about what it was like, leading up to that last little bit, and then the moment you got to step on that scale and start rehydrating.
So by the time that we had gotten to the venue and had the portable sauna, I was, I had already been through all the panic. I was already, I can't breathe. It's too hot. I had already ran away from you guys and hid in the locker room on the cold tile.
And you had already cut 7.1 pounds.
Yeah. So it was definitely rough at that point too. And I guess I just recently found out that I want to be in silence when I'm panicking, I guess. I love talking to people, and I love, airing out my feelings. I guess that sounds weird, but I like talking about things. I like getting things off my chest, because sometimes I just think that that's best. I don't like to bottle things up. I never have. But normally, like, I feel like when I have a bad day and, like, I come here or I talk to you, like, there's been times where I've talked to you about some problems that I've had in my daily life, it's better. And, like, Evan, like, I love Evan so much, and I hang out with Evan all the time. Evan always makes my day better. And even, like, he would try to talk to me, and I was like, get away from me. I don't want to talk to you, blah, 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 And it was stressful, and, like, it's like when you're hangry. Like, people don't think that hangry is a real thing, but, like, I do get hangry, and you just, like, I've decided that if I wake up, like, I don't really want to talk. Like, I didn't want to talk to you guys in the sauna. Like, I just kind of want to be alone, I guess. Maybe that was just, like, that moment. It was the first time. Maybe I'll, be better in the future, but it's just very, like, I think I consider myself a very mentally strong person. Like, I'm a very strong person in my daily life. Like, I stand up for myself. I do things on my own. So in that sense, I do believe that I'm strong, and I never thought it was going to be that hard. But it's way different than people would ever think. And it's, I don't know.
So you make weight. We get you through it. I mean, we're in and out of the sauna. You're doing like all you could at the time, which at the time was like about 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Was about all you could manage. And we were like just slowly. And so we get you to make you literally made it on the exact ounce, right? You make weight. You start being able to rehydrate. It's real now.
Yeah.
You're going to be fighting tomorrow night. Talk about what that was like that night, and then fight day. You wake up and all of a sudden, like, Dad's going to be outside of the hotel. We're doing the morning shakeout. You're going to be, your hair was already braided, but you're really getting into fight mode. Let's lead all the way up to fight night.
So after we weighed in and everything, we went to Mongolian Barbecue, which is my favorite place to eat. Like, if Mongolian Barbecue would sponsor me, I would genuinely do anything for that company. Like, I love their food so much. So that was definitely, like, a huge mood booster. After, obviously I got to drink water, which was, like, revolutionary in that moment. Like, I hadn't had water in what felt like 3 days, so water, and I had Pedialyte, and that was all great. And then we ended up leaving, like, shortly after that and getting food. And that was, like, immediately my mood was better. I immediately felt like I was a whole new person. Like, it felt like I am right now. So eating and drinking water, rehydrating, all of that was great. The food was great. And I wasn't necessarily nervous. Like, I was excited to be where I was, and everything was going great at that point. Like, after the weight cut, everything seemed so much more rewarding at that point. And then we ended up going to the mall and stuff, so that was fun. It got my mind kind of off the fight and more like, okay, this is my daily life. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to go get a smoothie or whatever. So it was definitely good. Like, I felt like I was being distracted, like, in a good way. Like, I wasn't necessarily stressing about what was going to happen the next day.
That's actually why I do that. I purposely try to make it just like a normal day. I want to make it just like chill vibes with people you care about, having a good time. We're walking through. You met a store owner that was like super. He thought it was so cool that you guys were fighting. He gave you merchandise for free and was like, man, like, I'm going to give you a T-shirt and Randy a T-shirt. So it was like just a good experience.
Yeah.
You wake up on fight day. It's real now. Sydney Churches, the young girl that walked in the academy all those years ago, is stepping in the cage tonight. Talk about the day, and then let's just talk about leading up to the fight and making that walkout.
So that morning we woke up, and my dad was working nights, so he had gotten off work around 9 o'clock at night on Thursday, came home, showered, and got ready and everything, and then he left Howell that night and drove to Lexington. So when we woke up, I woke up like super early, like not super early, like 8:30, before everyone else did. I was like, I felt like a kid on Christmas. Like, I was super excited. And so I looked out the window, and I saw my dad's car out there, so I called him, and I was like, oh, you can come in, And so then we all started getting ready, and I remember asking you in the car on the way to the venue, after we did the shakeout and everything, I was like, when am I going to get nervous? Like, I wasn't really nervous. I was more excited, and my mood never really changed. Like, I feel like I was super focused, and everything was fine throughout the whole day. And I remember thinking in my head, like, okay, James said I would get nervous at the venue. We're at the venue. We're backstage. Still not very nervous. I never really felt nervous in the sense of, like, I get nervous when I have to go to get an oil change by myself, because I just, I don't know what to say sometimes, and I just get nervous in certain situations. So I was waiting for those nerves to set in, and they didn't, which actually made me feel good, because I was like, okay, at least I'm not nervous. At least I wouldn't go out there and look like I was nervous. And that was something I was really scared for.
So do you think the lack of nerves was just you were so focused and felt prepared that you were ready to do what you had to do, that you just knew that you were going to take action when the time came?
When I was sitting down in our little, like, cubby, I like I had thought about it like for weeks beforehand, been like, there's just no way I'm gonna lose this fight. Like, I've been training for so long. I feel like I deserve this. There's just no way that I'm gonna lose. People would ask me like, how do you think you're gonna win, or what are you gonna do? And I was like, I don't know. I just know that I'm gonna do it. And I never, like, I didn't really have a game plan. I didn't know anything about her, so I wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to hit her with this and then take her down or sub her or anything. I knew that I was going to win. And there was no question about it. Like, anytime I would start to think, like, oh, like, what if she does this? Like, there was never really a thought like that. Like, I knew so confidently that I was going to win. I was sitting there, I was listening to music, and I was like, I could kind of like see her through the curtain, and I was kind of like looking at her, and I was like, I don't see it going any other way. I was even trying to like put in a scenario where I do lose, and I couldn't in my head. I could not put myself in that situation because I knew that wasn't going to happen. I just genuinely felt like I had deserved that moment, and that all of these times and like everything that I've been through was going to shine in that moment, and I was just going to make a name for myself, and I did.
You just dropped some incredibly powerful knowledge. I'm sitting across the table as your coach learning from you, because the way you just said, listen, I just knew I was going to win. Like, I didn't set any expectations. I didn't even have a specific game plan. That just made a light bulb go off in my head that like sometimes fighters tie themselves to like, all right, I got to get out there. I got to put them against the wall. I got to take them down. Well, then as soon as that starts not happening, or like I can't let a takedown happen, and then they get taken down, doubt starts to come in, because in their story, in their mind, they were like, I can't let this happen. And now it is, and all of a sudden everything starts to crumble. Whereas like you were like, whatever happens, like I'm going to win this fight. Like, yeah, this could happen, that could happen. But at the end of it, my hand's going up. That is really, really a powerful mindset to have. Like, winners win. There's like, that's always a funny quote that I say to people, like, winners win. Like, you don't have to overly script things. It's just, if you have the ability to be successful and you go chase it to your potential, you can just find a way to win. So you walk out to the cage. Actually, I don't want to skip so now we're in, you've gone through the warm up. You're ready to go. They move you into the curtain. You are standing behind the curtain with me, Evan, and your father were the only three people there, right? Randy.
Devin.
Randy and Devin did come into the curtain with us. So it's us. I move you up to the front. Spotlights are on you. They're announcing you out next. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to walk to the ring. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? Your song starts playing. You go walking out to the ring, and then, you're up in the ring. Lance announces you. Describe all of that, and then tell me what you remember of the fight.
So it's actually, that's a question that everybody asks, what were you thinking? What was going through your head? And I really can't say anything was. Like, I was thinking about what was going on in the moment, and that was it. I feel like a lot of people get into the cage and think about so many things that go on in their in their daily life. Like, I wasn't thinking about my dad. I wasn't thinking about Evan. I wasn't thinking about, oh, what is everyone at the gym going to think if I lose or if I win this fight? I was only worried about what was going on in that moment. And that is hard for me to say and, hard for me to believe, because I overthink everything. And I, put something in a scenario when it happens. Like, when Evan says he's going to go do something, I'm like, okay, this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen. And I am actually, I literally think I'm crazy in that sense. Like, I always overthink every situation in my life. So when I talk about it and I'm like, I wasn't thinking about anything. That is when I told Evan that, he was like, really? Because I am always thinking about something, and I'm thinking about something in 40 different ways. So I was standing there, and my song started playing, and I think I jumped a couple times, and I was because I was so excited, and there was a lot going on, and I wanted to shake, but I didn't want to shake because then people would think I was nervous. So I was jumping, and I was clapping my hands, and I was walking, and I just felt this overwhelming, superhero, straight out of the Marvel movie, force come over me. And I was like, all right, it's time to go. And then I was walking in the cage, and I think I shuffled around the cage, and I think I slapped her hand or something, just to be nice, because I wouldn't have done that unless I was trying to be nice. And I just literally something out of a Marvel movie, this force came over me. I felt like I was a superhero in that moment. That sounds dumb, but that's exactly what happened. Is my mind set in, and I was just ready to do what I've been training to do for a long time.
So they announced Sydney Churches. I remember you went right up to the camera and you like smiled. I think you double flexed. You were fired up. And then they say go with the fight. And now it's time to it's time to get it done. It's time to, after all these years, go use your skills in a fight. And I'm going to preface this with, you put it on her. From the moment that bell rang, she was there to try to figure out how to deal with you and how do I solve these problems? How do I, do I slide back? Do I try, I got to remember that you were just there to fight. You went after her from the opening bell until when you finished her in the second round. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you could see the look in your eyes. That woman was like, okay, how do I solve this situation? Like, what do I have to do? And you were like, let's fight. You know what I mean? Usually people's first fights are kind of a blur. They're kind of just like this crazy thing, and they watch it back and they're like, that's me? But what do you remember from the first fight? And then when we're in the cage after, you just won. You're celebrating. They're about to raise your hand. You're on a pay-per-view stream. Your family and friends are going to say, this is going to exist on YouTube forever. Just capture that moment for me.
So now that I've watched the video, and by watch the video I mean I watch it every morning in my bed when I wake up.
You should literally use that as motivation. When the day starts to feel a little heavy, or the sky looks a little cloudy out, or Evan came home 20 minutes later than you thought he would, right? You should watch that video and go, life is pretty fucking awesome.
So I've watched it and I've played it back and I've talked about it, and more of what was going on in my head has started to come back and be in my head. And I just remember, I wanted to punch her in the face. I wanted to hit her. I wanted to fight this woman. That's something that I wanted to do, whether it was her or whether it was somebody else. I didn't care who it was. I wanted to fight her. And literally the first punch I threw snapped her head back, and I was like, no fucking way. That was really cool.
You actually landed a 3-piece right off the bat, because I remember, I'm terrified in people's debuts. I try not to show it to people, but you never know how someone is going to perform until they fight.
Right.
I've had people that I thought were going to do unbelievable that completely tanked. And I've had people that I'm like, oh God, that were you threw a 3-piece off the bat that snapped her head 3 different directions. And I was like, oh my God. You know what I mean? But continue.
So I felt like I kind of hurt her in that sense. And I was like, all right, I'm going to keep going for it. I didn't really know what I was going to do either, but she kind of didn't run at me. So I was like, all right, I'll run at you then. So then I hit her, and then she tried to clinch with me a lot. And I think that was more of her trying to just not take damage, which, respect. I mean, I wouldn't want to get hit in the face if I didn't have to either. And so a lot of that was everything that I've learned in training, I could hear exactly what you were saying, move off, spin off the cage and get a body lock and everything. And those are all things that I do quite often. I look for a lot of hip tosses and everything. And it was funny because after the fight, I was sitting, in the back or sitting at dinner or something. And I was like, dude, earlier in the day, I literally looked at James and I said, yeah, it would be nice if I could throw a hip toss and finish her and mount. That was something I just so casually said earlier in conversation, and I had no...
I remember. You 100% said those exact words. You didn't say any other way to finish. You said those exact words.
And that was I didn't game plan for that. I don't practice hip tosses on a daily basis in the gym. I don't practice ground and pound all the time or anything. It was just something that, I have thrown hip tosses before, and I was like, I would love to finish with a TKO. As much as I would love to just win, I would love to just finish with a TKO. I think that would be awesome. And so... she held me a couple of times, and then I was still able to work a little bit on the body. I remember I think I kneed her once or twice. I hit her in the ribs a couple times. I snuck in an uppercut. And at that point, I was feeling good. That was all in the first round. I was like, after the first round, I was walking over, I was smiling.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. First round ends, and the look on her face is kind of oh my God, this girl's kind of bringing it to me.
Yeah.
She's taking some damage. You clearly won the first round. You're intense. You're not backing up. You are what you said you were going to be. You showed up from the moment you two faced off. She's going to know your presence. I come into the ring. You have a huge smile on your face. You're not even breathing hard. What were you feeling? What were you thinking? And let's talk about the second.
So... obviously we had worked together a couple times. I came in once and we did the shakeout, and then we had worked together earlier in the day. And you always say you don't want that person to know you're tired, because I was tired. I was breathing hard. It wasn't necessarily easy to just hit her in the face the whole time. It's not easy to just throw a ton of punches. And so I was, and also with the adrenaline, like it was up and down, so I was like, that's exhausting on its own to just have a ton of adrenaline going up and down and up and down, you're hitting her and then like you're doing damage and then she's holding you and you're like, oh crap, like I could be, I'm losing right now, whatever. So I was kind of just like replaying in my head that like that I don't want someone to think that I'm tired. And at the end of the day, like I was still there to punch her in the face and I was still there to do damage to her essentially, and that's exactly what I showed up to do, and that's exactly what I knew I was going to do. And so that was more my focus. I didn't really care that I was tired, which is crazy because any other time I'm tired, I'm like, holy crap, I'm tired, I can't do it. But
do you remember our last private lesson where when you and I worked together, I only really focused on, hey, don't show me you're tired.
Right.
You gotta have a poker face. Yeah, you're tired, but so is she.
Right.
You might not be able to fight as well as you did when you were fresh, but you can fight as well as you can right now.
Right. Like that when you said we did 2 rounds and then you were like, oh, yep, you're tired now. Just wait till the end of this round that I actually didn't tell you we were going to do, but we're doing it.
100%, because I knew that you were going to go through that battle and I wanted to have the mental preparation there to make sure that it wouldn't crumble you.
Yeah, it definitely worked because I was like, all right, I'm a little bit tired, but I didn't show that. And I was so excited at what I was doing and that was finally me. I was kind of just soaking that all in. Because I remember I was sitting on the stool, I was taking a drink of water, and I was like, this is so fucking cool. Like, I stepped in the cage, and I was like, man, like, you know how many people...
The little girl that wanted to grow up and just be cool and looked at so many other people that she had labeled as cool and knew Ronda Rousey was so cool, hitting those hip tosses and being a superhero. That's you right there. You're sitting there as that woman.
It was so crazy. Like, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, my God, like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I can, but, like... I can't believe I did that and it went so well and that I was able to like fully execute things that I am good at all at one time. Like it's actually crazy to think that I just did that. Like that's something I've done for so long and been so passionate about, and now I just like I made it a thing, and that is so cool to me.
So you win your fight, you're feeling incredible, you go to your sister's wedding the next day, amazing. You go straight to Florida with your boyfriend. Life is just on cloud 9. You know what I mean? But one of the things that sometimes happens to people is you have all of this incredible back-to-back-to-back. Well, when all that goes away, life can try to drag you back down because they're like, it's back to routine. It's back to you might have a boss that you have to have a conversation with, which you actually just stepped up and told your boss, hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks, right? And you said, I need to be changing careers. Are you still going through with that, by the way?
So I did put my 2 weeks in. My last day was the Tuesday, so the day before we left for vacation. And they ended up, like, filling all my shifts, like, other girls took over. But Saturday mornings are just the days that they don't have someone for. So I did say that I would still work Saturday mornings because I really don't mind. My boss, who I actually, like, have a problem with, isn't there on Saturdays. So I figured that would remove a lot of my conflict. I don't have anything against any of my coworkers. Like, I actually think we get along really well. And it's not that I really have anything against my boss. It's that I really struggle with women of authority. I think because... like, my mom disciplined me as a kid, and, like, she was there. But there was some points where my dad was so chill with me, and my mom was so strict with me, so that I would just ask my dad for permission from things, and I wouldn't care about what my mom said. So I kind of, like, gave up on women of authority. Like, my mom, what she said didn't necessarily matter as much. So now I have a really big problem with women of authority, like, in my life. Like, if that makes sense. Like, some people don't get that, but... listening to a woman boss me around all the time, which I understand that's her job, like that's what she has to do, I work for her, but that was so hard for me sometimes. Like I just wasn't really able to understand because I felt like I was doing enough, and maybe I was, maybe it's not my problem, but that was really hard for me to deal with her and what my eyes felt like she was being rude to me and making me feel like I wasn't good enough at what I was doing, which I was great at my job. If you talk to any of my customers, like they really like me. I'm really good at my job. I'm a very outgoing, person, and I did carry out. Like it's not like I was like fine dining or anything. Like my job was fairly easy. So to be made out to be like I wasn't good at my job was like very defeating to me. Like I answer the phone, I put food in bags.
I bet you it's also the way she's going about it. I don't think it's the fact that you are bothered by a woman in authority, because I think if it's an actual figure that is giving you respect and treating you with respect and doing the right thing and being a real leader, and if you make a mistake, like showing you why and encouraging you to like, hey, we can work through this together, that wouldn't bother you. But the abuse of authority from someone just because they have the role over you, that's probably where you have a lot of conflict.
Like I don't know, like it's not like I like if Bobby was to coach a class, it's not like I'd be like, oh, not going to pay attention. But she would also help me with things and, guide me on things that I was doing wrong or whatever. So that's exactly it. It's just somebody using their authority to boss me around in a sense that, like, there's way better ways she would have been about it. Because, sure, I have an attitude and I'm very, like, I have a short temper. Like, I would retaliate a little bit, come out with something snarky. But I also do respect people and I do value, like, I liked my job. But so I'm just working the 1 day a week right now, and I have applied at a couple different places, and I'm trying to right now I'm just trying to figure out where my life's going.
So there's a couple things that I want to talk about before we end the podcast. So two things in particular. Number one is you have, from what I can tell, an awesome man in your life now, and he's incredibly supportive. And I mean, he was sitting in the sauna next to you and I with his jeans on and just trying to help you in any way he could through the process. I didn't know him really at all before this trip, but even during that short period, I really like Evan a lot. I think he's a good man, and who knows if life will keep you two parallel or not, but it's nice to see how supported you are and how, like, he is willing when it's your turn to be in the light to, like, make it the Sydney show. It's not just the Evan show and you're my tag along. You've experienced different relationships. Mm-hmm. You've experienced relationships where you had to be constantly catering to others versus getting a return. How has that impacted your life? How has that changed your life? And then the final thing I want to talk about before we wrap it up is just, what your goals are moving forward, for fans or friends or family, like if everything works out, would they see you in the cage again? And then we'll wrap the episode up.
Yeah, so Evan, we've only been together for about 7 months, and he is really great. Like, he's so nice, and he's so, like, open with me, and, like, we have a great relationship. Like, there's really, like, we butt heads a little bit because I'm very, like, I overthink, and I, like, ask him stupid questions like, oh my God, do you still like me? I know you were out in public today. Did you meet any other girls that you liked and thought were pretty? Like, that's literally, like, daily things Evan has to go through. Like, I worry about so many things, and it's not necessarily that he doesn't make me feel insecure. Like, he makes me feel more secure than really anybody else has ever. But it's just kind of like my own thing. I think it's things from, like, my past relationships where I just have, like, this little bit of worry. And I've gotten so much better about it because Evan really is so great to me. He does support me in everything that I do, and he helps me, and he's a little bit older than me, so he has a little bit more, maturity in some in some ways, so he's able to, like, give me advice on some things and help. And he really does, and he just, like, he's so helpful with everything, and it's so nice to be supported in, like, this sense. Like, I've been passionate about MMA for a long time, and, like, I've had it, help me in a lot of ways, and I've had it, like, devastate me in a lot of ways, like, where I've been not able to fight and stuff. So it's nice that he understands, like, I don't want to go to the gym today. My fight was just canceled. Like, I'm sad. I wanted to sit in bed and cry because that's how I felt in February when my fight got canceled. And he was like, I get it. Like, that's not, and, like, that's nothing that he's ever been through, but it's nice that he's able to, like, understand how I feel instead of just be like, well, if you're going to fight, you're going to fight, blah, 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 blah. You should just go to the gym no matter what. And, like, your feelings are important. And I think some people use that as fuel, and I don't. Like, I do in some senses, but I like feeling good, going to the gym, and leaving feeling better. Like, if I'm having a really crappy day, like, I don't want to do anything, let alone, like, go exert my energy into something else. And, like, that's something I'm going to have to get over. I'm going to have to train no matter what. But it's so nice that Evan is, like, willing to sit down and, like, just let me kind of be myself and, like, decompress about some things and not force me to go do something. Like, when I don't want to go to the gym, he doesn't, like, force me to go to the gym, which is something that my dad would do, who's also a great man in my life, and I love my dad, and I'm thankful for everything that he's ever done. But there's just some ways that I do things that my dad does differently, and Evan understands me in that sense. And, like, Evan literally sat in the sauna with us in his jeans. He rolled his jeans up and sat in the sauna with us for hours and didn't complain nearly as much as I did. And I was the one that actually had to do it. He could have left at any point, went and got water, went and got food, and he sat there the whole time. And I think that's somebody that, like, genuinely loves you. And that's exactly what I've always wanted since I was a kid.
Absolutely. And like I said, I can see it. I've only got to know a couple of your boyfriends a little bit. They were never really that involved, but, like, I saw the support and I was like, this is a good thing. So finally, girl, I said to you, when you have your first fight, you'll really decide whether it's for you or not. Because people find out when you do that first fight and you get your hand raised or you take a loss or whatever happens, no matter what happens, because winning and losing isn't what decides it. Something in your heart or mind is either like, yo, I like this, or it's like, nah, that was fun, but not for me. What are your goals now? Family, friends, people that are supporters of yours, what can they expect out of you? Things go ideally. What do you see as just the next step? And then,
So obviously, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to work around that, and I'm going to be training consistently and hoping to get a fight in July or later this year. Like I'd like to cut down to 115 and fight there, but I'd be willing to take another fight at 125. Like in July, I'd probably fight at 125, just to have a healthy weight cut and not just like drastically cut all this weight and then end up losing a fight because I had a crappy weight cut. I would hate that. So I would love to fight in July for B2. I love B2 as a promotion. They catered to all of us. They were great. So I would love to fight in July for them. Nothing against any other promotion, but I like them. I feel like I'm at home.
And they're coming to Michigan. They're coming to Novi. It's going to be right up the road. It's in a great venue, so it makes sense.
Super convenient, because my grandparents are still around and everything, so I would really like for them to be able to see it live. So it's just more convenient than Kentucky was. So I would like to fight in July. If not, like August or September would be fine. But I definitely do want to continue to fight. I don't think that if I were to lose a fight that I would lose the fire in me. I definitely think that this is something that I'd really like to do.
Well, Chapter 1 of Sydney, the MMA prospect, has opened, and you start as a 1-0 amateur that put on an incredible performance. You finished the girl in the second round by TKO from Mount, exactly like you said you were going to do in a casual conversation, and here we are today podcasting about it. So, Sydney, it's been an honor to train you since you were a little kid, and I'm looking forward to the future, and, I hope that when we're about to make your pro debut, we can sit back down and we can even reflect on this episode and the woman that you are and how you've grown, and, it's onward and upward. So thank you for joining me today, and we'll wrap this up.
Thank you.